The studio lights felt hotter than usual that morning, casting a sharp glow across the polished table where the hosts sat waiting. The audience buzzed with anticipation, sensing something different in the air. It wasn't just another episode. There was a quiet tension, the kind that builds before a storm, subtle but unmistakable. Clint Eastwood walked onto the set with his usual calm, measured stride. No theatrics, no exaggerated gestures, just presence. At his age, he didn't need to command attention. It followed him naturally. The applause rose quickly, louder than expected, as if the audience already knew they were about to witness something memorable. He greeted the panel politely, nodding to each host before taking his seat. Joy Behar leaned forward slightly, her expression sharp, curious. She had a reputation for being direct, sometimes confrontational, and she wasn't about to change that today. The conversation began smoothly enough. They talked about his latest project, his long career, and the evolution of Hollywood. Clint answered in his usual style, brief, thoughtful, never saying more than necessary. There was a rhythm to it, almost like a slow dance. The hosts would ask, he would respond, and the audience would occasionally laugh or applaud. But then the tone shifted. Joy tilted her head, her voice taking on that familiar edge. She pivoted the conversation toward politics and cultural issues, an area where she often pressed guests harder. The question sounded casual at first, but there was weight behind it, an invitation or perhaps a challenge. Clint didn't react immediately. He paused just for a second, as if choosing his words carefully. The room seemed to tighten around that silence. He gave a measured response, emphasizing personal responsibility and the importance of respecting different viewpoints. It was calm, neutral, almost diplomatic, but Joy wasn't satisfied. She pushed again, this time more directly, framing her question in a way that demanded a clearer stance. The audience shifted in their seats. Some leaned forward, others exchanged glances. This was no longer a routine interview. Clint's expression didn't change much, but there was a subtle shift, something firmer in his eyes. He leaned back slightly, his hands resting calmly, completely at ease despite the growing tension. He responded again, but this time there was more weight behind his words. He spoke about the danger of reducing complex issues into simple arguments, about how conversations had become more about winning than understanding. His voice remained steady, but it carried a quiet authority. Joy interrupted, trying to steer the conversation back, but Clint didn't raise his voice or match her energy. Instead, he waited. And when she finished, he spoke again, more directly now. He pointed out that not every discussion needed to turn into a debate, that sometimes listening mattered more than responding. It wasn't aggressive, but it was unmistakably firm. The kind of response that doesn't shout, yet still lands harder than anything louder could. The audience reacted, some clapping, others murmuring. The atmosphere shifted again, but this time it wasn't tense in the same way. It felt decisive. Joy attempted one more push, framing her point with a bit more urgency, but Clint didn't engage in the back and forth anymore. Instead, he gave a final response, short, clear, and unshakable. He said that he had spent decades working with people from all walks of life, and what mattered most to him wasn't labels or arguments, but respect. Real respect, not the kind performed for applause. There was a pause after that, not awkward but heavy, the kind of silence that means something has just settled into place. Clint glanced briefly toward the audience, then back at the panel. He gave a small nod as if signaling that he had said everything he intended to say. And then, without any dramatic buildup, he stood up. For a moment, no one moved. The hosts seemed caught off guard, unsure whether this was part of the show or something else entirely. The audience hesitated too, caught between surprise and admiration. Clint adjusted his jacket slightly, offered a polite but brief goodbye, and stepped away from the table. That's when the applause started. It wasn't immediate, it built, starting from a few scattered claps before growing into something louder, more unified. Not just polite applause, but something with energy behind it. Joy remained seated, her expression composed but quieter now. The usual rhythm of the show had been interrupted, and it was clear that regaining it wouldn't be easy. As Clint walked off the set, he didn't look back. He didn't need to. The moment had already spoken for itself. Behind the scenes, the production team scrambled slightly, adjusting to the unexpected turn. The remaining hosts tried to transition back into the show, but the energy had shifted too much. The conversation felt different now, less sharp, more cautious. In the audience, people whispered to each other, replaying what they had just seen. Some nodded in agreement, others debated quietly, but everyone seemed to recognize that they had witnessed something out of the ordinary. It wasn't a loud confrontation. There were no raised voices, no dramatic outbursts, and yet it felt more impactful than any shouting match could have been. Because what stood out wasn't just what Clint said, it was how he said it. Calm, controlled, and completely unwilling to be pulled into something he didn't believe in. Later, clips of the moment would circulate online, drawing reactions from all sides. Some praised his composure, others criticized his decision to walk off. But nearly everyone agreed on one thing. It was unforgettable. And that's the thing about moments like these. They don't rely on spectacle or noise. They linger because of their simplicity, their clarity. A man was asked to engage in a certain kind of conversation. He chose not to, and in doing so, he made his point more clearly than words alone ever could. By the time the show ended, the studio had returned to its usual routine. The lights dimmed, the audience filtered out, and the set was reset for the next episode. But the feeling of that moment didn't disappear. It stayed with the hosts, with the audience, and with everyone who would later watch it unfold on their screens. Because sometimes, the most powerful statement isn't made by continuing the conversation. Sometimes it's made by knowing exactly when to end it and walking away.